Thing. Good morning, welcome to the Morning Momentum. Today being the 22nd of May 2024. This is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs and expert opinion. My name is Alfonsoh. I use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines this morning. We start with the Standard newspaper. Ruto versus DP, the return of Tanga. Now, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua yesterday made a series of stopover rallies at a time his boss is cutting trade deals in America. His message to his supporters was he is in government to stay and his shares are intact. A feeling of deja vu is now reigning in the government. That is a top story beefed up for you on page 4 of the Standard this morning. Also on page 3, 600,000 students failed to apply for college and varsity. On page 10, ODM wins 1.2 billion shillings denied by Treasury. On world news, Iran pays last respects to Raisi. That is a top story on page 19. Also on page 6, more taxes will drown the ailing economy. Now, manufacturers have sent a stark warning to government that should they proceed with the tax proposals in the finance bill, the economy will suffer and efforts to revive it could flop. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Also on the Standard, audit hustler jet, Azimio says as US deny funding trip, building the nation. Now, President William Ruto's tour of the US has raised a stink over the hundreds of millions taxpayers will have to foot for him to sell the country to the world. Yesterday, the opposition said the money used should be accounted for as the hosts distanced themselves from the huge bill. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 5. In numbers, 200 million shillings is the money the taxpayer will foot for a round trip in a luxury jet for Ruto and his VIPs. Now, as Azimio, we want a special committee established in Parliament to investigate the expenditures that went into hiring that expensive jet. It is disappointing that the Kenya Kwanza government can be this wasteful and insensitive. Those are sentiments of Stewart Mazayo, the minority leader of the Senate. Now, let's take a look at the Daily Nation this morning. The elephant in the room, Gachagua opens a Pandora'S box. Now, leaders from marginalized regions have hit out at DP over resource sharing. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 4, 5, 6, and 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's recent call for the adoption of the one man, one vote, one shilling mantra in revenue sharing has opened him up for attacks by politicians from his Mount Kenya backyard, who ordinarily would not be taking on him publicly, lifting the lead on a looming rebellion that could lead to his isolation within the ruling alliance ahead of the 2027 elections. But the truthful man tells his rivals to continue dreaming and accuses them of being traitors, even as his boss, President William Ruto, maintains a studious silence. Has the DP opened a political Pandora'S box? You want to catch up with that again on page 4, 5, and page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. In matters education, learning paralyzed as striking junior secondary school teachers keep off classrooms. Learning in grade 7 and 8 in thousands of public schools has been paralyzed as the boycott by intern teachers enters its second week. That story is augmented for you on page 14 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also on the Standard this morning, farms warn against bid to increase cooking oil exercise duty. it will push prices beyond reach of Kenyans. We will take a look at that on page 16 of the Daily Nation. On page 2, more than 500,000 Miss University college slots. Now, more than 500,000 students who sat the 2023 KCSE examination have not been placed in tertiary institutions, dealing a severe blow to the government's 100% transition policy. In results released by the Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service yesterday, just 258,935 out of the 890,654 students eligible for degree, diploma, craft, and artisan certificate programs have been placed. Now, let's delve into the Daily Nation. We take a look at page 2. Over 500,000 Miss University and college slots. The Bachelor of Education program attracted the highest number of applicants, says KUPP's boss. Shattered dreams as just about 258,000 secure places in tertiary institutions. You want to catch up with more of that on page 2. On page 3, I'm sorry, says Diddy after video shows savage attack on ex-lovers. Footage shows a man CNN identified as Mr. Combs pushing Miss Ventura to the floor and kicking her. Speaking in a video posted to his Instagram page, the rapper said he took full responsibility for his inexcusable actions. You want to catch up with that story on page 3. Also still on page 3, court throws out appeal of sex pest jailed 330 years for defiling 5 girls. In 2021, David Kareganjao was sentenced to 330 years in prison for defiling 5 schoolgirls aged between 3 and 6 years. Believing the punishment to be excessive, he decided to appeal. However, the High Court on May 21st upheld the sentence, deeming it commensurate with the severity of his offenses. More of that on page 3. Let's take a look at page 4. Why Gachagua is a man under siege in Mount Kenya. DP's recent absence from high-profile state functions hosted by President Ruto has further lent credence to a possible frosty relationship at the top of the Kenya Kwanza. Deputy President's recent call for the adoption of the one man, one vote, one shilling mantra has opened him up for attacks by politicians who ordinarily would not be taking on their boss. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 6, DP fights back as he warns of traitors. Second in command says his opponents are being used by outsiders to cause divisions in Mount Kenya region. Mr. Gachagua explains his absence from the public eye, saying he had gone to seek the divine intervention in Mount Kenya. Definitely facing Mount Kenya, that's a top story on page 6. Let's take a look at page 8. Gachagua revenue push sparks outrage. Deputy President wants the allocation of funds to counties to be based on population rather than geography. Leaders from ESOL counties have criticized the so-called one man, one vote, one shilling formula of sharing revenue. Ex-Senate Speaker yesterday in a press briefing said, and I quote, "We are also going to advocate for the one man, one vote, 1 kilometer formula. We are dismayed by these retrogressive political ideologies." You want to catch up with more of those on page 8. Let's take a look at page 10. Contractor summoned over 3 billion shillings KICC renovation cost. New figures differ sharply with the 1.94 billion shillings initially put as the total contract sum. Now, China Wu Yi has failed to clear 674.6 million shillings owed to local subcontractors. President Ruto and First Lady are on a tour of King Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, you want to catch up with more of those insights on page 10. Let's take a look at Mombasa County briefly. Mackenzie case impractical, judge warns. The High Court has advised for the prosecuting controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie and his co-accused with information that contains 191 counts of murder is not in the public interest or the interest of the administration of justice. Briefly, in Kwale County, trader resists order to relocate. Now, traders in Kwale Town are up in arms over a notice by the county government to demolish their stalls to pave the way for a beautification project. In Homa Bay County, water crisis as county yet to pay 19 million shillings bill. A standoff between Kenya Power and the county government has led to a water crisis in Homa Bay Town and its environs. In Bungoma County, blow for ex-minister widow in land battle. An attempt by the widow of former Minister Soita Shitanda to gain ownership of a 100-acre piece of land that he acquired together with a local businessman has flopped after a court ruled in favor of the trader. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. About the International Day for Biological Diversity, the article is also beefed up for you on page 12 and 13 of the Daily Nation. Let's take a look at page 14. Education in paralysis as junior secondary school teachers keep off classrooms. The junior secondary school learners have been idling in classrooms as there is no one to teach them. Interns who are hired on one-year contracts are demanding better terms of employment. At a glance, TSC set to employ 26,000 teachers. In 2024-2025 budget proposals, the TSC has been allocated 8.3 billion shillings to employ 26,000 teachers on permanent basis in January 2025. Most of these teachers are deployed in junior secondary school and will have served for 2 years by the end of the year. Of the total figure, 4,000 are primary school teachers and other 22,000 are in secondary schools. However, the new plan will leave out 20,000 others who will have not served for 2 years as required by the TSC. TSC has been allocated 4.68 billion shillings to hire 20,000 more teachers on contract. Let's take a look at page 16. 25% duty will put cooking oil beyond Kenyans' reach. The association urges lawmakers to shoot down proposal saying it will kill the edible oils industry. Manufacturers say the ripple effect will also make prices of various goods unaffordable. 150 shillings is the eco-levy rate per 1 kilogram of plastics proposed in the Finance Bill 2024. You want to catch up with that on page 16. Let's now shift gears and take a look at the expert opinion on the Daily Nation this morning. Flooding crisis shows dire need for laws and damage. Now, it is vital that African governments become world leaders in forward-looking adaptation planning. Those are sentiments by Mohamed Ado, who is a climate expert. Now, embrace forced car insurance. Young Maranga, an insurance advocate. Now, he says the social benefits are greater than the social costs. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 18. On page 19, build capacity in trade ministry. Access to U.S. markets can only help you when you have demonstrable capacity to ramp up export capacity and where there is room for significant trade-offs. Those are sentiments by Jaindi Kisero. The article is beefed up for you on page 19. Let's take a look at today in history. May 22nd, 1979. Sudan's President Gafar Numeiri says his government inadvertently helped former Assistant Commissioner of Police James Ephantus Mungai to flee to Europe, insisting that Khartoum was not aware then of the exile's supposed hostile actions towards the Kenyan government. You want to catch up with that also on page 20. Now, the letter of the day, Limuru 3 not divisive. Shareholding is. Kenya Kwanza politicians have no moral authority to brand the Haki coalition formed by some Mount Kenya leaders an ethnic outfit, yet they never criticized Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. The DP had likened the government to a limited company, comparing the numerical strength of communities. He said they would benefit from it according to how they voted for the Kenya Kwanza leadership. For the motoring enthusiasts, you have the DN2 motoring article here for you as well. Let us now shift gears and take a look at county news. Now, in Machakos County, buyer groups in cement farms land sale differ. Disagreements between opposing groups are threatening to scuttle the ongoing East African Portland Cement Company plots regularization process. On October 17, 2023, East Africa Portland Cement Company offered to sell and regularize the occupation of those who had irregularly acquired plots. Three umbrella groups, Syokimau Mavoko Community Association, Ngwatanio ya Mukamba Self-Help Group, and Kathama Welfare Association, were recognized by EAPCC to handle the process on the squatters' side. In matters devolution, MPs want deputy governors given specific roles in law. Senators say this will end fights between governors and their deputies. Governors currently have the discretion to assign their deputies portfolios or not. You want to catch up with that on page 23. Now, briefly in the coast region, expect heavy rains, rough seas. Now, maritime security teams are on high alert in the region following cautionary advice from the Kenya Meteorological Department over tropical storm Lely. The warning issued yesterday morning follows forecast indicating the possibility of heavy rainfall and rough seas throughout the week. Marine operators, especially small boat operators, have been advised to avoid deep sea areas. In Homa Bay County, farmers urged to adopt fish farming. The state has urged farmers to venture into aquaculture to reduce stress on fishing resources in Lake Victoria. Reduced fish stocks in the lake have prompted illegal fishing methods and conflict among fishermen. In West Pokot County, man arrested over wife's murder. A text message sent to a 25-year-old woman by her landlord in Kapenguria may have led to her death. Jennifer Chemtai was allegedly stabbed to death on Monday by her husband following suspicions that she was having an affair with the landlord. Let's take a look at more county news. We take a look at Samburu. Sandalwood on the brink of extinction. Now, Kenya's sandalwood trees are on the brink of extinction due to rampant and premature harvesting driven by strong international demand. Kenya Forest Vice Chief Conservator of Forests Alex accused corrupt government officials of aiding the illegal trade through bribery. Now, let's take a look at Nairobi County. 5 rescued from collapsed building. 5 people in Mukuru, Fuata, Nyayo escaped death by a whisker after the 3-story building came crashing down on them. The building was among dozens earmarked for demolition for being built on riparian land along River Ngong. Now, where biting hunger keeps destitute children in school, the state has not set aside funds for school feeding program. In arid areas, children are more than hungry for education. They also yearn for free lunch. Now, 1 injured as lorry overturns on Nairobi's Kenyatta Avenue. Nairobians mill around the scene of an accident which a truck carrying cement overturned on Kenyatta Avenue yesterday. 1 person was slightly injured. That is a top story making the headlines on page 24. Also, social media influencer told to pay MP 2 million shillings for defamation. A social media personality has been ordered by the magistrates court in Nyamira to pay a legislator 2.5 million shillings for defamation. A reckless post on WhatsApp has landed Wycliffe Asuga Nyaega in the soup after the influencer, who is popularly known as Enchui Ensacha, made defamatory remarks against nominated MP Irene Mayaka. You want to catch up with more of that story on page 24. Let us now take a look at the international scene. Americans arrested in failed DR Congo coup. Assailants breached the Palais de la Nation in Kinshasa that houses Tshisekedi's office. Security forces kill US-based Congolese politician and 3 other attackers. You want to catch up with that on page 26. Now, let's take a look at Dodoma in Tanzania. Tanzanians warned of winds in ocean. Tanzania's weather authorities on Monday issued a warning for periods of strong winds exceeding 40 kilometers per hour and waves exceeding 2 meters in the Indian Ocean, triggered by the presence of a moderate tropical storm called Lali north of Madagascar Island. The Tanzania Meteorological Authority warned that strong winds and large waves are expected to last 3 days from Sunday to Tuesday, adding that rainy periods are likely to be observed over the coastal areas, particularly between Tuesday and Wednesday. In Lusaka, Zambia, Hichilema seeks to help over drought. Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema on Monday urged Southern African countries to use their resources to help countries affected by drought in the region. Hichilema said solidarity and unity are needed to combat the humanitarian crisis caused by drought due to the El Nino weather conditions. You want to catch up with that on page 26 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's take a look at page 27. Kremlin says it is curious. The US appears prepared to sanction ICC. South Africa welcomes prosecutors' move, saying it will help uphold the rule of law. ICC prosecutor has sought arrest warrants against Netanyahu, Israeli defense chief, and 3 Hamas leaders. Also, WikiLeaks founder allowed to appeal extradition. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was given permission on Monday to appeal against extradition to the United States after arguing at London's High Court that he might not be able to rely on his right to free speech in a US court. Let's take a look at Addis Ababa. Prime Minister Abiy shuffles cabinet members. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed reshuffled his cabinet on Monday, appointing Aisha Mohammed as the new Minister of Defense. Mohammed, who previously served as Minister of Irrigation and Lowlands, replaced Abraham Bailey, who has now taken her former position. In Beijing, China sanctions former US lawmaker. China has banned former United States lawmaker Mike Gallagher from entering the country and taken other measures in response to his words and actions that interfered in China's internal affairs, the foreign ministry said yesterday. With that story from Beijing, we take a look at the business news right here on the Daily. Homes farms to soon feed excess power to the grid. The move is a major win for power producers with low storage capacity. What businesses homes sell to Kenya Power will be used to offset consumption bill. Now, in 2022, the draft net metering regulations were first published. Energy CS Davis Chirchir has said they will be gazetted on Friday. Also, data shows milk loss almost doubled last year. The quantity of wasted milk in 2023 rose to a 4-year high of 290 million trees, translating to an income loss to farmers of 14.7 billion shillings as dairy producers grappled with a glut that resulted from favorable weather. That is a top story making up the headlines on page 28. KCB Group added to Morgan Stanley Markets Index. Now, Morgan Stanley Capital International, MSCI, which provides investment data and analytics services, has promoted KCB Group to the MSCI Frontier Markets Index, increasing the stock's visibility to global investors. In other news, Kenya up to 3rd place in Africa meetings hosting. Kenya has jumped to third place on the continent in attracting international in-person meetings. Matters finance foreigners hold only 843 million shillings of tax-free bond. Foreign investors held a mere 834 million shillings, or 0.2% of outstanding infrastructure bonds issued in the 2023-2024 financial year to the end of March. With that story of tax-free bond, we now take a look at the sports news on the papers this morning. Let us start with athletics. Chepkoech eyes perfect debut in African event. Mother of two finishes third in the 10,000 meters race at Ulinzi. AKs is using the two-day competition to select the team that will fly the country's flag in Cameroon next month. In matters basketball, Equity targets second place. Equity Hawks are confident of finishing second in the regular season of this year's Kenya's Basketball Federation Women's Premier League and qualify for the playoffs. Let's take a look at football now. At last, a clear pathway to Kenya's first Football World Cup appearance. Junior starlets are well poised to do what our male teams have failed to do in over half a century of trying. Rwanda's journey to host 2024 FIA Gala started in Nairobi. A Formula One car will be on display on African soil for the first time also since 1993. Let's move on swiftly and take a look at the Europa League final. Unbeaten Leverkusen chase more history. High-riding German side has not lost in European record 51 matches since August. Atlanta stand between newly crowned Bundesliga champions and second trophy. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 38. On page 39, AFC Leopards step up preps ahead of semi-final against the Police. AFC Leopards coach Thomas Trucha has predicted a tough battle when they face Kenya Police in the Mozartbet Cup semi-final on Sunday in Nairobi. In our time, we played because of passion, but now football is all about money, says retired legend Dawo. What undisputed Kenyan Giants Gor must do to excel in Africa is also a top story making the headlines on page 39. Kogalo's best performance on the continent was way back in 1987. Coach Jonathan McKinstry's greatest wish as he leaves Gor Mahia is for the club to shine in the CAF Champions League next season. He says, and I quote, "I hope that as I go away from here, we have put a foundation in place to make sure Kogalo go forward, not just 1 or 2 years, but 10, and not just again dominate Kenyan football, but also make a mark on continental scene," end of quote. That is a top story on page 39. Let's take a look at the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. Validity of 62 billion shillings paid to oil farms cannot be confirmed. Petroleum Department never followed advice from Treasury. No evidence provided to demonstrate funds were used in accordance with the law. In numbers, 18 billion shillings is the amount owed to the 47 oil marketing companies by State Department for Petroleum through bond instruments. 21st July 2022 is the date the National Treasury wrote to the department advising it to form a multi-agency team. Now, in other news, High Court judge faults Parliament for reducing political parties' funding. The High Court yesterday said the decision by the National Assembly to reduce the political parties' fund to 800 million shillings last year was illegal. In a win for ODM, Justice Chacha Mwita ruled that the National Assembly cannot reduce allocations to the fund through a supplementary Appropriations Act. Now, with that story of the High Court, we come to an end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for choosing to stay with Younib TV and